Mr. Anderson, and we're on the part 3 of this Heliocentrism and the Luciferian Scientific Dictatorship. And I'm not reading the subtitle and all that. We already did all that. So, right out the gate, I'm starting with the Reformers. Just a couple quotes from the Reformers, like Martin Luther. And I'm not going into any depth as far as secret societies or what the Reformation was or wasn't, controlled op, all that kind of stuff. I'm leaving that out of this. I'm trying to stay focused on the heliocentrism and not go to all those different side paths, right? Rabbit holes, whatever the hell people want to call it. Okay, so this is John Calvin. Again, real name Cohen, so on and so forth. I'm not going to go there. So the Christian is not to compromise so as to obscure the distinction between good and evil, and is to avoid the errors of those dreamers who have a spirit of bitterness and contradiction, who reprove everything and prevent the order of nature. You will see some who are so deranged, not only in religion, but who in all things reveal their monstrous nature, that they will say that the sun does not move, and that it is the earth which shifts and turns. When we see such minds, we must indeed confess that the devil possess them, and that God sets them before us as mirrors in order to keep us in his fear. In other words, these heliocentric morons are here just to keep us in check, keep us straight. And by us, I mean the people that profess this guy's faith, okay? A simple survey of the world should itself suffice to attest a divine providence. The heavens revolve daily, and immense as is their fabric, and inconceivable the rapidity of their revolutions. We experience no concussion. Dude, that sounds like every flat earther I've ever talked to right there. No disturbance in the harmony of their motion. The sun, though varying in its course, every diurnal revolution returns annually to the same point. It's clockwork up there. It was created. But anyway, that I'm adding stuff. So let me stop that. The planets, in all their wanderings, maintain their respective positions. How could the Earth hang suspended in the air were it not upheld by God's hand? And let's see. I had to move my desk a little bit. Hang on a second. How could the earth hang suspended in the air were it not upheld by God's hand? By what means could it maintain itself unmoved? While the heavens above are in constant rapid motion, did not its divine maker fix and establish it? According to the particle denoting emphasis is introduced, yea, he hath established it. And this is, of course, Martin Luther here, which everybody knows of. There is talk of a new astrologer who wants to prove that the earth moves and goes around instead of the sky, sun, and moon, just as if somebody were moving in a carriage or a ship might hold that he was sitting still and at rest while the earth and trees walked and moved. But that's how things are nowadays. When a man wishes to be clever, he must invent something special, and the way he does it must be the best. He's calling gammas out right here. The fool wants to turn the whole art of astronomy upside down. However, as the Holy Scripture tells us, so did Joshua bid the sun to stand still and not the earth. And I think this is the last one. I'm only hitting this briefly. We Christians must be different from the philosophers, i.e., scientists, in the way we think about causes of these things. And if some are beyond our comprehension, this is so key right here. And if some are beyond our comprehension, like those before us concerning the waters above the heavens, we must believe them and admit our lack of knowledge rather than either wickedly deny them or presumptuously interpret them in conformity with our understanding. They do not make Christians like that anymore. I'm not saying he's a Christian. I'm not saying, because I know people accuse, there's like the whole rose and cross thing and all this stuff. I'm not going into all that. I'm going off the information. Okay. And that makes a lot of sense to me. If this is your professed faith, why would you just jump on a bandwagon with some presumed cause by a scientist instead of just falling back and holding off a minute? What the fuck's the matter with y'all? I'm digging that. Anyway, indeed, it is more likely that the bodies of the stars, like that of the sun, are round and that they are fastened to the firmament like globes of fire to shed light at night, each according to its own endowment and its creation. Okay. And that's him. That's his lectures on Genesis. Excuse me. Hang on. Sorry about that. So, moving on. We got the architecture of modern political power. Ostensible control over the knowable by marketing institutionally accredited science as the only path to true understanding. Obviously, that was their intention because what do we deal with every day? We deal with people subjected to that. Clearly. Listen to that. Ostensible control over the knowable by marketing. Look at the words, man. Marketing institutionally accredited science as the only path to true understanding. Okay. Brave New World. Of course, we got the world famous Grabler family, the Huxleys. Um, quote: the older dictators fell because they could never supply their subjects with enough bread, enough circuses, and mysteries. Under a scientific dictatorship, education will really work with the result that most men and women will grow up to love their servitude and will never dream of revolution. There seems to be no good reason why a thoroughly scientific dictatorship should ever be overthrown. Silent weapons. The bookkeeper can be king if the public can be kept ignorant of the methodology of the bookkeeping. All science is merely a means to an end. The means is knowledge, and the end is control. That's point blank true. I don't care who said that. This is just a few notes on the Catholics because I need to go in on the Jesuits and all that, no doubt. I'm not doing that right now, though. So 1616, I think this is Galileo and Copernicus. 1616, because I think Copernicus is coming up here. February 1616, a team of 11 consultants for the Roman Inquisition condemns the Copernican system, stating that the heliocentric system is foolish and absurd in philosophy and formally heretical. The Inquisition, huh? Roman Catholic Church in the 90s saying Galileo was right. You can see the symbology there, of course, him throwing up the 666. And he's wearing a small hat because he's a Gnostic Kabbalist. That's why he's throwing up 666. Scientific societies are yet in their infancy. It is yet to be expected, excuse me, it is to be expected that advances in physiology and psychology will give governments much more control over individual mentality than they now even have in totalitarian countries. Fitch laid it down that education should aim at destroying free will so that after pupils have left school, they shall be incapable throughout the rest of their lives of thinking or acting otherwise than their schoolmasters would have wished. Copernicus, his uncle was a Catholic bishop. People say, oh, he wasn't a Jesuit. He wasn't a Catholic. He wasn't a Catholic priest. Are you kidding me? The dude was a canon. How do you become a canon without being a priest? So we got Copernicus here, Polish astronomer who proposed that the planets have the sun as the fixed point to which their motions are to be referred, that the Earth is a planet. Man, it's hard to read because it's so damn stupid. Sorry. That the Earth is a planet which, besides orbiting the sun annually, also turns once daily on its own axis and that very slow long-term changes in the direction of its axis account for the precession of the equinoxes. This representation of the heavens is usually called the heliocentric or the sun-centered system, derived from the Greek helios, meaning sun. Parents from a wealthy merchant family. What a shock. Copernicus's theory had important consequences for later thinkers of the scientific revolution, including such major figures as Galileo, Kepler, Descartes, and Newton. Copernicus probably hit upon his main idea sometime between 1508 and 1514, and during those years he wrote a manuscript usually called the Commemoral. I'm not going to pronounce any of this crap. Okay? Commemoral, blah, blah, blah. Little commentary. However, the book, okay, I'll try to say it. Commentariolus. However, the book that contains the final version of his theory, the Revolutionis Orbitum, blah, 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 6 books concerning the revolutions of the heavenly orbs, did not appear in print until 1543. Okay. Lucas Watson Road took his nephew under his protection. Watson Road, soon to be a bishop of the chapter of Warmia, saw to young Nicholas's education and his future career as a church canon. This dude's connected. Between 1491 and about 1494, Copernicus studied liberal arts, including astronomy and astrology, at the University of Krakow. Like many students of his time, however, he left before completing his degree, resuming his studies in Italy at the University of Bologna. How do you say that? Bologna? Where his uncle had obtained a doctorate in canon law. So his uncle was a canon. The bishop procured their election as canons by the chapter of Freiburg. The whole family belonged to the Third Order of St. Dominic. Don't tell me this guy wasn't connected, man. Stop that noise. Only 27 recorded observations are known for Copernicus's entire life. Most of them concerning eclipses, alignments, and conjunctions of planets and stars. The first such known observation occurred on March 9th, 1497 at Bologna. At De Revolutionibus, Book 4, Chapter 27, Copernicus reported that he had seen the moon eclipse the brightest star in the sky of the bull, Alpha Tauri. Okay. 1503, Copernicus finally receives a doctorate, like his uncle, in canon law, but from an Italian university where he had not studied. How the hell you do that? Didn't he leave before getting his doctorate at another place? And then he can just magically get his degree like that? I'm ignorant to all that stuff, by the way. I don't know how all those degrees and shit work. So it's probably just ignorance or something. As a church canon, again, how is he a church canon if he's not a Catholic priest? He collected rents from church-owned lands, secured military defenses, oversaw chapter finances, managed the bakery, brewery, and mills, and cared for the medical needs of the other canons, and his uncle. From 1501 to 1503, Nicholas was in Padua. Okay. In Ferrara, he took his degree of Doctor of Canon Law, but no document is found of his graduating in medicine. This is a spoiled little bitch right here. Word. That's my assessment. This is a little fucking, excuse my language. This is a little spoiled little royal bitch right here. Straight up. 1537, King Sigismund of Poland put his name on the list of 4 candidates for the vacant episcopal seat of Farmland, or whatever it says. Makes it probable that, at least later in life, he had entered the priesthood. I think you're batshit insane if you think anything otherwise. After the death of his uncle in 1512, Copernicus went to Freiburg for the election of a new bishop. and remained there until 1516, when he was nominated administrator of the diocesan castle of Allenstein. Allenstein? His term of 4 years being over, he returned to the chapter in Frauenburg. 3 years later, the bishop died, and Copernicus became administrator. Copernicus was nominated deputy counselor on the financial regulations. Prussia. So his reputation was such that as early as 1514, the Lateran Council convoked by Leo X asked through Bishop Paul for his opinion on the reform of the ecclesiastical calendar. His answer was that the length of the year, of the months, and the motions of the sun and moon were not yet sufficiently known to attempt a reform. The incident, however, spurred him on, as he himself writes to Paul III, to make more accurate observations, and these actually served 70 years later as the basis for working out the Gregorian calendar. He hesitated a long time whether to publish it or to imitate the Pythagoreans, who transmitted the mysteries of their philosophy only orally to their own disciples for fear of exposing them to the contempt of the multitude, the mystery school philosophy style. His friends, who had become interested in a new theory, prevailed on him to write at least an abstract form. Moving on. Manuscript copies of what have been discovered in Vienna and Stockholm. In this commentary, Copernicus stated his theory in the form of 7 axioms, reserving the mathematical part for the principal work. This was in 1531, or 12 years before his death. From this, the doctrine of the heliocentric system began to spread. So, from this, you could actually say, from this on, the doctrine of the heliocentric religion began to spread. Wouldn't that sentence make perfect sense and basically mean the same exact thing that this sentence says? What's the difference in those two sentences? This isn't semantics, by the way, because look at what it's saying. From this on, the doctrine of the heliocentric religion began to spread. That's what this sentence is actually saying. Okay, just very briefly, because generally speaking, when I do my presentations, I try to go chronologically. But just for brief context, I'm just going to touch on the Copernican thing in modern terms. Just for a couple slides, I think I did. So this is from Cornell. Okay, this is Living in a Void: Testing the Copernican Principle with Distant Supernova by Timothy Clifton. Okay. A fundamental presupposition of modern cosmology is the Copernican principle that we are not in a central or otherwise special region of the universe. Studies of these type of supernova, together with the Copernican principle, have led to the inference that the universe is accelerating in its expansion. The usual explanation for this is that there must exist, look at the words, must. That's religious, you guys. The usual explanation for this is that there must exist a dark energy to drive the acceleration. Alternatively, it could be the case that the Copernican principle is invalid and that the data has been interpreted within an inappropriate theoretical framework. That's my guess, you guys. If we were to live in a special place in the universe, near the center of a void where the local matter density is low, then the supernova observations could be accounted for with the addition of dark energy. We show that the local redshift dependence of luminosity distance can be used as clear discriminant between these two paradigms. Future surveys of these supernova that focus on a redshift range of this will be ideally suited to test this hypothesis and hence to observationally, oh my god, you guys, observationally determine the validity of the Copernican. Dude. Observationally determine the validity of the Copernican principle on a new scales, as well as probing the degree which dark energy must be considered necessary ingredient. Must. Necessary. How is that not religious? Why not just scrap it? Why does it have to be there? Because when you're in a religion, it has to fucking be there, dude. It can't not be. You can't just steer the boat around, dude. You got to keep going and double down and triple down and all that stuff. Religions triple and quadruple down, dude. They don't go back to the drawing board. Does this look like they're going back to the drawing board? Or does it look like they, as well as probing the degree to which dark energy must be considered a necessary ingredient in the universe? I'm moving on. This is the dude that with Stephen Hawking, this Greg Ellis guy. Or is it Greg? It's something Ellis. That did this cosmic black body radiation and the existence of singularities, right? A recent theorem on the occurrence of space-time singularities is discussed. It's shown that the observations of 3 degree K black body background indication indicate that a universe contains a singularity if the general theory of relativity, if the general theory of relativity holds, if the energy momentum tensor obeys a reasonable inequality and the causality is not validated, the possible nature of the singularity is discussed. So I'm not going into this bullcrap. I'm just gonna show you a quote from this guy because it begins and ends with this guy's quote, really. People need to be aware that there is a range of models that could explain the observations. For instance, I can construct you a spherically symmetrical universe with Earth at its center, and you cannot disprove it based on observations. You can only exclude it based on philosophical grounds. Excuse me. In my view, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. What I want to bring into the open is the fact that we are using philosophical criteria in choosing our models. A lot of cosmology tries to hide that. Props to this dude for, at least in this flash of time, trying to somehow stay in honor, because this one quote puts it to sleep. You can exclude it on philosophical. This dude's conscience is speaking out and saying, dude, I'm at least going to be real with you a little bit. So we come back full circle to what was said. This is Fred Hoyle. So we come back full circle to what was said at the beginning of the book. Today, we cannot say that the Copernican theory is right and that the Ptolemaic theory is wrong in any meaningful physical sense. Copernicus was urged by Cardinal Schönberg, then Archbishop of Capua, in a letter dated at Rome, 1st November 1536, to publish his discovery or at least have a copy made at the cardinal's expense. But all the urging of the friends was in vain until a younger man was providentially sent by his side. It was George Joachim, I don't know how to say these people's names, Riccioli, who quitted his chair in mathematics in Wittenberg in order to spend 2 years at the feet of his new master. Riccioli next obtained for publication the manuscript of a preliminary chapter of a great work on plane and spherical geometry. Finally, Copernicus, feeling the weight of his 68 years, yielded, as he writes to Paul III, to the entreaties of the Cardinal Schönberg, of Bishop Geiss of Culm, and the other learned men to surrender his manuscripts for publication. The first copy of the 6 books on the revolutions of the celestial orbits was handed to him the very day he died. Fortunately for him, he could not see what Osiander had done. This reformer, knowing the attitude of Luther and lexicon against the heliocentric system introduced the word hypothesis on the title page, and that's an interesting excuse. Maybe it's true. I don't know. Introduced the word hypothesis on the title page, and without adding his own name, replaced the preface of Copernicus by another strongly contrasting in spirit with that of Copernicus. The preface of Osiander warns the reader not to expect anything certain from astronomy, nor to accept its hypothesis as true. Dang, I'm not reading that. The dedication to Pope Paul III was, however, retained, and the text of the work remained intact. They're trying to get away with what they can get away with, is my opinion. On the 5th of March, 1616, the work of Copernicus was forbidden by the Congregation of the Index until corrected. And in 1620, these corrections were indicated. 9 sentences by which the heliocentric system was represented as certain had to be either omitted or changed. A monument by Thorwaldsen was erected to Copernicus in Warsaw, and another by Tieck and Torun. Rheticus, Clavius, and others called Copernicus the second Ptolemy in the book The Second Almagest. Riccioli, Italian astronomer. After teaching philosophy, I think this guy was a Jesuit. Um, After teaching philosophy and theology for a number of years, chiefly at Parma and Bologna, he devoted himself at the request of his superiors entirely to the study of astronomy, which at that time, owing to discoveries of Kepler and the new theories of Copernicus, okay, he conceived the bold idea of undertaking a reconstruction of science with a view to bringing it into harmony. So he's trying to synthesize it with contemporary progress, trying to bring people up. This led to his Almagastum Novum Astronomium, considered by many the most important literary work of the Jesuits during the 17th century. Oh, so the Jesuits were trying to bring us up and consolidate things. What a shock. But what I find interesting is his interpretation of the 1634 experiments. So, quote, Cabello affirms the most emphatically from his own often repeated experiments that if 2 balls are dropped at the same time from the same height, one of 1 ounce and one of 10 pounds or whatever greater weight, either both being of lead or one lead and the other stone or wood, providing that the air is still and that the lighter one is not of so small a weight that it's not forceful enough to overcome the resistance of the air, it will happen that both reach the ground at the same moment. Damn, that was a terrible way to write that sentence. Besides wooden balls, we released stones of diverse weights from the tower of our chapel at the Society of Jesus, with once a bronze basin, at another time a wooden board having he put by me under the drop, so that from the different sounds I would distinguish better which one hit the ground faster. I noticed the heavier one reached the ground a little more quickly. Interesting. Even when they're doing these tests, they're dropping it off the towers of the Jesuit tower. And people are trying to say there's no connection to Jesuits. So they're testing these fucking balls, dropping them off the Jesuit towers. However, he still conducted experiments in an attempt to see if he could detect any evidence for motion. In Almagestum Novum, he presented 126 arguments, 49 in favor of the Earth moving around the sun, and 77 in favor of a stationary Earth. For some, he quoted his own experiments. For some, he quoted experiments of others. For example, here are 5. If Earth rotates, the impact of a cannonball will be less if launched towards the west than towards the east. But this is contrary to our experiments. A parallax in Sirius should be detectable between the equinoxes. If Earth had a diurnal rotation, heavy bodies falling near the equator would have a fundamentally different motion than identical bodies falling near the poles under identical conditions. Heavy bodies naturally fall to the earth along a line that is straight and perpendicular to the ground. If launched perpendicularly upwards, they fall back upon the location from which they were launched. If the earth had a diurnal and annual motions, these bodies would follow curved trajectories. And of course, the clouds and the birds in the air would be seen to fly west as if they're being left behind by the earth. So I find this very interesting, for one, because everything stated here is true. But I find it interesting that this Jesuit is trying to consolidate and bring these people forward. And I find it very interesting. It comes across to me like he's identifying what they need to lie about now. I know that's a ridiculously paranoid statement. Um, Welcome to my mind, I guess. So this is perfect circular star rotations, right? But yet we're going through the universe, right? We're rocketing through the universe, spinning, rocketing around the sun, following the sun across half a million miles an hour, 480, whatever the hell it is. We are tumbling and flying around like I don't know, like a stuffed animal in a dryer or something. Why would the star trails look like this and not like this or something? Maybe not this extreme, and obviously not in one night or something. But come on, man. Come on, y'all. If the liberty taken by Copernicans to interpret scriptural text and to elude ecclesiastical decrees is tolerated, then one would have to fear that it would not be limited to astronomy and natural philosophy, and that it could extend to the most holy dogmas. Thus, it is important to maintain the rule of interpreting all sacred text in their literal sense. What happened to that? What happened to clean hands, bud? Tycho. We got a few more slides, I think, and then I'm gonna wrap this up and leave this as part 3, and then go, because I think the next part I want to go into the circumambulation rituals that the Freemasons do, because that's really fascinating to me, because it's a very ancient thing that goes way back, way before Freemasons. So Tycho, Danish astronomer. A lot of people are fans of Tycho. He proposed a theory of the solar system which contained elements of both the Earth-centered Ptolemaic system and the Sun-centered Copernican system. In his theory, the other planets revolved around the Sun, which itself revolved around the Earth. At odds with the three great powers, king, church, and nobility, Tycho left. Is that how you say it? Tycho? Tycho left Venn in 1597, and after short stays at Rostock and Wandsbek near Hamburg, he settled in Prague in 1599 under the patronage of Emperor Rudolf II, who also in later years supported the astronomer Kepler. Tycho attempted to continue his observations at Prague, with a few instruments he had salvaged from Uraniborg, but the spirit was not there, and he died in 1601, leaving all his observational data, excuse me, to Kepler, his pupil and assistant in the final years. Now, this deserves its own complete presentation. The whole thing with Tycho and Kepler and how they did him. It's very, very interesting. And here's his model here. Very, very, very interesting. Um, but I would want to do it very, very in depth on that to even address it. Is there something weird happening there with this guy? Kepler, another Mason. The planets move in elliptical orbits with the sun at one focus. The time necessary to traverse any arc of a planetary orbit is proportional to the area of the sector between the central body and the arc. And there's an exact relationship between the squares of the planets' periodic times and the cubes of the radii in their orbits. Harmonic law. It was Kepler who was influenced by the Pythagorean mysticism. What a shocker. It was Kepler who was so influenced by Pythagorean mysticism that he was convinced God created the universe in accordance with certain simple mathematical harmonies. This was a cult member. He attended seminaries at Heidelberg and Maulbronn before studying theology, philosophy, and mathematics at the University of uh, Tübingen. At Tübingen, Kepler's scientific ability attracted the notice of the astronomer Michael Maslin. Through Maslin, that's an MM. Through Maslin, Kepler became a supporter of the Copernican theory. Tübingen School of Plato. Why am I not shocked by this? The posthumous Somnium, on which Kepler labored until shortly before his death, is indicative of his fertile mind. In this work, Kepler describes a journey to the moon and discusses the existence of lunar inhabitants. A crucial link between the thought of Copernicus and that of Newton, Kepler was an important figure in the 17th century scientific revolution. His belief that the sun regulates the velocity of the planets was a milestone in scientific thought. Influenced by the Pythagoreans, Kepler viewed the universe as being governed by geometric relationships that conform to the inscribed and circumscribed circles of the five regular polygons. So it's not a cult, right? It's not a religion. October 16th, 1646, Elias Ashmole, antiquarian, was received into Masonic Lodge at Warrington, Lancashire, together with his Roundhead friend and cousin Harry Manwaring of, man, these names are insane, Carencham, Cheshire. Ashmole's diary gives the time of the event as 4:30 p.m., notes the name of the lodge's warden and the names of the six other masons, then of the lodge. Ashmole's motives for joining were undoubtedly similar to those of the antiquary William Stukeley, who states in his autobiography that in 1720 his curiosity had led him to be initiated into the mysteries of Masonry, suspecting it to be the remains of the mysteries of the ancients. It is conceivable that, after acquiring by the study of astrology a taste for the exploration of ancient lore and symbolism, Ashmole not only desired to gain knowledge of such Pythagorean teachings as the lodges claimed to preserve. There, dude, it's so blatant. But that he was at this particular juncture of his life also looking for the fellowship of a brethren who, if not equally learned, should share his respect for the old and mysterious. Ashmole's note of his Masonic initiation is the earliest known record of speculative Freemasonry in an English lodge. This is the guy that founded the Royal Society. And yes, I will be going in on that. Okay? These guys are always dealing with occult works. These guys are all Freemasons and Kabbalists. People like Newton drawing Solomon's Third Temple and all this stuff. They're usually alchemists. No doubt this guy was an alchemist. Look at these. Look at this artwork here. Kepler's God was a dynamic, creative being whose presence in the world was symbolized by the sun's body as the source of a dynamic force that continually moved the planets. Okay? The heliocentric system. Helios. I'm gonna kill this one, and we're gonna go into part 4 next time, and go in on this circumambulation ritual. Very, very ancient ritual. That's actually, I'm looking forward to that one. So until next time, thank you guys for checking it out. Peace out, y'all.